Thank you for joining our webinar. This webinar today is a normal pathology filing webinar. So for our MyBotGP product, that works with both EMIS and SystmOne. We have an announcement to make today. I'm sharing my screen. Sanj, can you see that and can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's still people registering as well. Good. So we have an announcement to make today as well, which we'll cover off at the beginning. Let's start the webinar. So as I touched on before, this is being recorded. If anyone has an issue with that, please let us know after the webinar. The intention is for those who've registered and are not able to attend, we send a copy of the webinar, and we'll also post it on our webinar page on our website, so people can review back afterwards if they want to. So the product today that we're going to go through is our normal pathology filing and SMS patients product. It is a MyBotGP product, which essentially means that it's fully bespokeable by you at practice level and quick to install. It works with both EMIS and SystmOne. Both of those applications it can plug into and start to manage normal pathology tests for you. We like following the same format with our webinars. I hope it's for those of you who've attended previous ones, I hope that's okay. What we like to do is to talk through the product, show you a demo. And we like questions, so if anyone has questions, please put them in the chat, and then what we'll do is we'll either stop part of the way through and answer some of the questions, or we'll cover the questions off as many as we can at the end. So we like to keep these interactive. The reason for that is you're going to have very specific questions that you want answered, rather to make sure that you understand how the tooling works, to build confidence to see whether you want to use it or not. So to begin with, the announcement that we're making today is we're now an official partner of an ICT, an NHS ICT, who use a hosting center that lives in an ICB. So essentially what that means for all of our clients is that MyBotGP will now live in an NHS hosted environment. Why that's important? It's important because it means you can have access to it, and it means that any automations that you buy from us, you will not need a computer at the practice. You will literally give us a username and password. The bot will have permissions predefined as to what to do, and it will log in and out from a remote area. So you'll have full access to a hosted machine. It's a much improved way of working, and we're pleased to be able to bring that to primary care. Working with technology in primary care can be challenging. Unfortunately, you don't always have access to the best stuff in the shortest possible time, but this partnership means that you do now in terms of our product range. It means that we can manage the automation for you as well. So all you need to do is to tell it what to do, and we'll explain how that works in the webinar. And for this scenario, if you imagine you have a remote worker working from an external location that's reading all of your pathology tests, looking for the normals and the abnormals, applying rules, filtering, skipping or filing or sending text messages where you want it to. Both Sanjeev and I will take the call. We'll take the webinar today, so we'll take it in turns. I'll start, and he'll jump in where appropriate. So to begin with, we're also this will be updated shortly to show our new partnership with an NHS ICT, along with the fact that we're on a Health Innovation Launchpad program, which is a program for bringing technology into the NHS. MyBotGP is an advanced automation product built specifically for primary care. It has a DCB 0129. For those of you that aren't aware, that is a clinical risk certification. That's something that it's recommended for us to have. For you at practice level, there are different certifications that you will be aware of. But for us, we must have a DCB 0129. MyBotGP, why it's different is you have full control over it. It's highly tailorable. So what we put here very high level is it's bespoke to the practice. What does that mean? Well, what we're starting to see now is lots more PCNs making acquisitions, or practices making acquisitions and then bringing it to the PCNs, and then the PCNs making acquisitions. And what it means is if this is acquired by a PCN, every practice will still have their own copy. So, and then because you have your own copy, you can set your own rules, your own filing rules, which is really important, as you will have differences of opinion on what pathology tests should be managed or shouldn't be managed, and what rules should be applied, give or take. You'll also sometimes be provided with pathology test results from different labs within a PCN, or multiple labs. Labs change ranges and change keywords, and invariably you may change your mind. So having a tool that can be acquired once and yet everybody has their own copy and can be bespoke falls in line with best practice, best practice for use of tech in healthcare. Obviously, as you may well be aware, we're supporting hundreds of practices nationally at the moment. This is a rather self-descriptive slide, that we like to show. That's the average amount of pathology tests a practice receives on a daily basis. People aren't very good with numbers and time. The analogy we like to give is, 2 to 3 coffees a day takes up to 15 minutes a day. Based on a 6-day week, because invariably a lot of people are working 6-day weeks, that works out at 91 hours a year. 91 hours a year based on an 8 or 9 or 10-hour day is a bunch of days that are being lost due to a 10 or 15-minute task that's done without people thinking about it. So based on that calculation, with up to 70% of pathology tests being looked after by MyBotGP, because our tooling is capable, we have clients using it to manage over 200 different pathology tests now, means that every doctor in the country who is currently spending up to 19 days a year filtering on normal, no action, and obviously not all normals are normal, some aren't normal and need further investigation, but we can cover off what that looks like in our platform further down the line. You can save a considerable amount of time. The way that it works very high level without covering over what the rules are, which is the important part, and we'll do that in a moment, is to put it simply, you tell MyBotGP which pathology tests it's allowed to look after for you. We call it filter because it's going to read all the pathology tests and filter against the ones it's been given permission. One of the differentiators with our tooling is that it can read every line on the path report. So where you have multiple tests on one path report, and for example, you may only want to give it permission to manage a couple of those lines, or all of them, or none of them, it's able to read every line on the pathology report and look for the path test it's got permission to action. And by action, apply the rules. Rules are defined at practice level. It's quite quick to do, and we'll cover off what that means in a moment. And that's to accommodate differences in approach by clinicians, labs. And again, our practices are changing all the time. When we had this slide made, we were up to 181. I believe the figure's now 200 different path tests. Now, obviously, some of those path tests aren't ones you get every day. There are a selection of path tests that you receive more or less of. But what we're saying here is the breadth of the tooling, because you can tell it to look for keywords or omissions of keywords or path tests without ranges, it can still action, because it can look in the patient record to look for conditions and on the path report. You can get really high. So some of our clients have got it up to 200 path tests, give or take, and that's not 200 a day. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding. That's 200 different pathology tests. And the way our tooling works is we don't charge per path test. It's an annual subscription. So, you know, you could be getting hundreds a day. It makes no difference, or hundreds a week, thousands a month. It will read all the pathology tests, as we said, confirm the ones it has permission to action, apply your rules, and filter on normal and mark normal or abnormal. If it's normal, it will be actioned, i.e. patient can have a text message sent if you want it to and marked as normal and filed. If abnormal, it's skipped. We don't touch the archiving functionality in both in SystmOne or EMIS. We leave that to our clients to decide. What we've seen is that different practices have different approaches to how they archive timeframes and protocols and increments. So the worry that you would have a tool in the front end picking up path tests, applying rules, deciding they're normal and filing them and sending messages without you having had the chance to see them is dealt with there. We have some clients who set some of the pathology tests just to be filed and archived straight away, and we have others that don't. They want to leave them in the inbox for a set amount of times, different people to double check, cast their eye over, and that falls in line with how you want to look after the tool at your practice. But in summary, we've built it so you don't have to be concerned that stuff will just fly through and you'll never see what's happened. You have full visibility and full control. Rules can be changed in minutes, as many times as you like, and obviously there's a very comprehensive audit log that's emailed to you every day, and there's more information in MyBotGP itself if you want to go into more detail. So this is the heartbeat of our tooling. So I like to describe it this way. If you flip everything on its head and just think about the rules, and then think about what pathology tests can be safely looked after by the following rules. So you can configure the pathology test based on any combination of the following decision points. And you can combine them as well. So it's not one rule per test. You can have 5 checks per test, or 3 or 2, whichever ones you see fit. And those tests are essentially minimum and maximum ranges. Obviously, if there are ranges, obviously for path tests that don't have ranges, it can look for keywords where appropriate. Is it in range or out of range? Do you need to check against the previous test result to look for a percentage increase or decrease? Well, it can it can do that. It can read the path test and say, oh, that one, if it sits in that range, I've been told to look at the last test, and then for a percentage increase or decrease as one of the rules to deciding if this needs further investigation or not. Do I need to look for keywords or absence of keywords? So there are obviously, as you're aware, there are keywords in the problem page. So some tests may be normal by means of a range, but if there's a keyword in the problem page or on the path report, that would mean that you don't want MyBotGP to look after them. So skip it and leave that for a doctor, or you may want to. Again, it's up to you. And obviously you can split off in terms of age and gender. So the way the platform works is you can add any of these rules in whichever way you see fit to any pathology test that you see fit. And sorry, quick sip of coffee. And bringing it back to what we were saying before, the benchmark at the moment, the maximum amount of path tests that we've seen used is about 200. And that's not saying you will put 200 through it. We're just saying that it is capable. That's the breadth across our practice. It's 200 different pathology tests. I've touched on the archiving. Nothing's removed from your system unless you want it to. And there's a detailed audit log that's sent to you each day. The way that it works is we plug it in. It only has permission to access pathology tests. Obviously, it's coming from a hosted environment in an NHS hosting center, and it will read all of your pathology tests. Won't action them, it will just read them. And the reason it does that directly is it's the safest and quickest way to suck out all of the names and all of the ranges directly from your lab. Okay, and keeps them in the memory. So every day when it's done its work, it will send you an email to whoever you want to have an email and say, this is what I've done today. And it will also say, oh, and I've spotted some new pathology tests that I've never seen before, because it's always looking for new tests to come in from the lab. Would you like to add them? And if you want to add them, you can log in with a username and password, add the logic, save it, and then the next time it sees it, it will know what to do. It won't ask you again. Or you can say, no, that's not for you. Leave that one. SMSing patients is possible as well per test type. So you can send messages to patients as well. So just as a high level example, let's say, for example, this is what your lab provided as a liver function test result. Here are the ranges that they've provided. So so after having read that and presented it to you and said, what do you want to do with that? You look at that, and then if you believe that, or in your opinion, you're happy to file for a normal based on what the lab is saying in those ranges, you don't want to change any of the ranges, you just click that box there, which says file for a normal report. So the next time it sees it, it's got permission to file because you've classed that as a normal report. If any one of those ranges has changed, it will fail. So it's locked down to only look for that particular test. And now let's say you're not comfortable with that and you want to supersede it. Okay, so you don't tick that box, and here's how you're able to add through the dashboard here your filtering logic, your additional checks. So, coming back to what the rules are, do you need to use keywords? Omissions of keywords in the problem page. For example, with HbA1c, does it say diabetes in the problem page? Or do you want to change any of the ranges and set your own ranges? We do have some clients that set their own ranges because they believe that's the right thing to do, and they adjust the ranges. All you need to do is to click here, change the range. Now let's say, for example, for one of those tests, subtests, you wanted to look at a previous test result and check for a percentage increase or decrease. Well, you just literally click that to yes, and then set your percentage tolerance below or above. So you've given it permission. So with a few clicks, you can look for keywords or omissions of keywords. You could change a range, or you could tell it to look for a previous test result for a percentage increase or decrease. And obviously you can factor in age and gender. So if you bring it back to these 5 rules, what they actually mean and how quickly you can deliver them, they're here. Ranges, keywords, absence of keywords, percentage increases or decreases, supersede the lab, age and gender, and it's a matter of clicking. So to set it up, MyBotGP will suck all of the path tests directly from the lab. They will all be presented in purple, I believe, or yellow, one of the colors that say these haven't been given permission to action. And then you'll quickly double click open it and say, yep, agreed, or change that range. We estimate once clients have become familiar with the logic, the actual physical setting up of the tooling is about 3.5 hours of clinical time split over a few weeks. Because once you've decided upon what rules you want to add, the physical clicking is super quick. I mean, in this example, you would say click file for normal reports, done, or no, okay, look for that keyword, write the keyword, check for a previous result, save. So we've built it in a way that means it's quick to deliver. So what does that actually mean to you? So here's a path test indicative list, which you should have been sent a copy of by one of my colleagues or our colleagues, Deandra, prior to the webinar. And hopefully this will make some more sense now. So what we have here is an indicative list of 181 pathology tests that our clients are using MyBotGP to filter for them based on those rules. It's all about the rules. And here you can clearly see at the top, that means it's been enabled, name, subline, gender, age, check for normal, ranges. Do I need to check against the previous test result? Do I need to look for keywords? And comment string, and whether you want to SMS or not. So if I scroll down here, without going left to right and confusing everyone, you can see how these rules have been manipulated by different practices across the country. Here you can see keywords with ranges for this particular test to manage these tests for them. And again, we have shared this already, but we will share it after the call as well. And just to reiterate, using the keywords can also be used on their own. So for path tests that don't have keywords, they can be looked after as well. The keywords are very powerful. They open up the ability to filter on more, because you're no longer just looking at ranges or percentage increases or decreases. You're now being able to leverage keywords. Emissions included. A couple more here, and then I'll come back to the audit log, and we can show you a quick demo and take it from there. This is the one I usually show on webinars, just because I find it quite interesting to show sort of capability. Prostate. Again, this is what this particular client has decided, how this particular client has decided to manage this. Other clients have got different opinions. They like to just check against the previous test result for an increase. But what you can see here is it's been told to look for 5 ages and 5 ranges. In addition to that, maximum ranges. In addition to that, it's been told to use keywords. You can see the keywords in the top corner over here. So if it reads those keywords, skip it, and then it will supersede it with the range. Like if there's no keyword, it will work from the ranges. With the keywords, it will work from the ranges and look for the keyword. And if the keyword pops up and means that range is no longer valid, or it's one you want to have a look at, then you're able to do that. This is a whole bundle on here. Again, some of these tests you'll have periodically, others you'll get hundreds of on a very regular basis. We have got clients doing putting health checks through this. Obviously, full blood count, all of that stuff is well within the capability of the platform to manage for you, as it can read every line on the pathology test. So it's not an issue. We've even got some scenarios where we have clients who've got 2 labs with different ranges for the same test. Well, as long as those tests are spelt slightly differently, which they are generally from the 2 different labs, MyBotGP can cope with that as well. It will just pick them both up as individual tests. So we actually have one client who I spoke to recently who said they have 3 labs supporting them. So, and this can cope with that as well. Okay, so if we bring it back to the presentation, this essentially has been represented. That's a representation of that in terms of how you add the additional checks on here. Very comprehensive audit log. That slide is quite straightforward because we could spend an hour just on the audit log, but it's comprehensive. Anything it touches is tracked and anonymized. Coming back to the hosted solution, that we deliver it from a hosted platform, and it's relevant for this conversation here, I can confirm we do not see any patient data. What this is an anonymized breakdown of all filings by date, by category, and then a detailed granular breakdown. So anything it touches, you have an audit. Every day you're emailed a list of what it's done. Excuse me. In addition to that, it's telling you what other path tests it's picked up. Okay, so I need to stop talking for a moment. I think my throat is gone. It's probably a good time to open up for a couple of questions, and then we can get back to a demo. So, Sanj, have there been any questions?
Yeah. So will the hosted option work with SystmOne as well as EMIS? So yes,
You can answer that.
Yep, no, I can confirm 100% the hosted option will work for both clinical systems. There's another question. Shall I just read it out?
Yeah, let's just flush it.
For tests that are reported numerically, if checks are only being made on the reference ranges, if a test is reported with text, such as unable to provide result, will they be set to abnormal, or would text checks need to be applied? Okay, that.
Yeah.
So to probably take this, I'd say there's two answers to that question. In terms of inconclusive tests, you've got the ability to set the way that they are described, and so that MyBotGP can look for inconclusive tests like unable to provide result, inconclusive test, not to, et cetera, et cetera. So you provide descriptions of how the lab sends inconclusive tests, and you pop that into the platform. It then knows when it sees that a set of words, it will know that it will effectively skip that test result and not file it as normal. With respect to numerical ranges, yes, if you're looking for ranges, it will look for ranges. If you then apply keywords as well, what you're saying to the platform, you're saying, well, okay, there are two checks I want to apply. I want to file based on my reference range, which again is freely definable, and also look for a keyword which is present or a keyword which is absent. And in that event where you put those keywords, you're essentially saying, I want two checks applied for that patient. So is that patient in range? Yes or no? And do I find these keywords? Yes or no? And if both of those checks are met by the platform or are found, it will then file it as normal. If they are not, it will then skip and leave the doctor.
Thank you. So I've so I want to mute up. I've put chewing gum in my mouth so I don't cough and keep interrupting everyone. So apologies if you see me chewing in the background. So come to the next question. How many times a day will it run? E.g. every 30 minutes. So we schedule it to run several times a day. We know rough run times on averages on how long it takes to, what list size determines roughly how many path tests that determines how long the bot needs to run. And we'll agree with you scheduling in advance of going live. That means that everything will get cleared each day. It will just log in and line up. Anything in the pipeline for abnormal results and generating tasks in SystmOne? Yes, is the short answer. Watch this space. We have a working model with our testing sites. We anticipate that should be ready early next year. These things just take a lot of time to do that, but yes, we are 100%. Excuse me. How do practices sign up? Yeah, we have DPIAs to share. We have, and all of that covers off the hosted platform, how it's delivered 100%. Sanj, do you want to jump to the next one?
Yeah, sure. How does the bot read a group of results that contain both normal and abnormal? So yeah, so where it's a group-based test, where there are multiple pathology tests on that one, as long as all of them are enabled within the platform, so as long as they are all enabled, it will then check against each pathology test category. And if one of those pathology tests is abnormal, i.e. out of range, the bot will skip and won't file. Okay, if any one of them as part of that group test is abnormal, it won't file. It will not. It will skip the entire batch.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Dying here, coughing. I'm really sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so if we haven't any more questions for now, we can go back to a short demo. I'll try and drink as much water, tea, coffee, or anything else that's in front of me as possible, so I stop coughing. And then we'll come back to the questions again afterwards. So just bear with me a second. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, that's a good point that sort of flashed up on the screen. For EMIS, we currently have live normal pathology filing tool. As you know, we have a document filing tool, which is also works in the same way, whereby it will use document for you. And we have repeat prescriptions coming live shortly. For SystmOne, we have normal pathology filing, and we hope to have the equivalent document live in the next 3 months approximately, which we're loosely calling attaching docs, but it's the same principle of picking up hospital letters, validating the hospital letters, coding the hospital letters in terms of what the letter type is, and then triaging to the appropriate person. So The slide comes from the demo rather comes from the slide. Let's wait for this to log in. What you're looking at here is the dashboard. So again, coming back to what we said before, let's say that your lab, let's forward it to this piece here. Just pause it in a second. Okay. Let's say that came in from your lab. It's really important. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that the tooling will read the path lab names and ranges directly from the lab, from the report, and save them in the memory for you. It limits the potential for any errors significantly. So for this example, the scenario is it's read the test, the full blood count, and this is all of the tests that your lab has presented for this scenario. That's how they're spelt. And this is the ranges that they've applied. So this comes in as purple, saying what do you want me to do with it. You double click, open it up as we touched on with the slide a moment ago, and then you'll cast your eye over it. Do you agree with that? If you agree with that, tick the box. This is actually what it will look like on your computer screen, and it will save. Well, and then if you want to send a text message, tick that box. So if you agreed with that from the lab and you wanted to send a text message to the patients that links to Accurix and you can put a specific message on there, you tick those two boxes and press save. And then every time a path test comes in with these path tests spelt in that way with those ranges, it will apply the logic. If any of these change or any of the ranges are different, obviously it moves the goalposts. And then, but here, going back to what we were saying before, here's your ability to do the keyword checks. You can see here keyword present, absent keyword in the problem page, and you would write the keywords in here. You can easily just click on any of these, change it and press save at any time. So you can adjust those and you can log in and out and adjust them at will. So if you wanted to set different ranges, if you want to check against the previous test result for any one of these, you just click on this drop down menu and put yes. This is just the time increment, and here's the percentage, and then press save. And obviously here you can see how hemoglobin estimation has been split off in terms of males and females with different ranges. And just for demo purposes, we've said, go back and look at the previous test result for, and put a tolerance in of a 10% change. And here you can file with or without comments. There's also a vitamin D insufficient functionality. Sanj, do you want to just run through what that is?
Yeah, certainly. So for vitamin D, we've got the ability to enter in two ranges. So you can enter in a normal range, as James has just shown, but you've also got the ability to set up an insufficiency range. If you can see, I think it's just grayed out at the bottom because of the way that the screen is, but top in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got the ability to essentially select vitamin D insufficiency Accurix, that tick box in the bottom. That then opens up the ability to pop in an insufficiency range, and then essentially you have two ranges, the insufficiency range and the normal range. And what that does, if a patient does fall within that insufficiency range, it will then send an automated text message to them, and you can tailor the contents of that text message within the message setup, just on the left-hand side, so two nodes above setup. And essentially just tailor the message of how you want that to be sent to the patient.
Thank you. So I'll just let this run for another couple of seconds, and then you can see it working. Here we're just showing the different path tests that it's spotted in the memory, and then you can see how they're being tweaked, with additional logic. So for here, it's picking up HbA1c, and what you're saying is you want to send a text message, and as one of the rules, you want to look for the word diabetes. Say this has come from your lab. And again, we're not saying these are the rules that you want to apply. We have to be very clear the unique selling point of this is essentially you set it up as you see fit, based on what you believe is correct. Our platform enables you to do that. The way we like to describe it is it's an extension of you. You're doing this with your brains at the moment, and all you're doing is you're saying, well, this is what I would do normally, and I'm happy to use those 5 rules, and I'll hand this over to the automation tool to do it for me, and it won't deviate. We'll just let it run a couple more, and then we can show a quick demo of it working, and then we can come back to some questions. Hopefully that's the end of my coughing fit. It seems to have passed. And so it's quick to update. I mean, generally the way people use this tool is they tend to install it, we install it and then go live. 20, 30 path tests, sometimes 40 path tests to start with, let it run for a couple of weeks, build up, confidence in the tool, understand how it works, get familiar with the audit logs, and then scale from, and then, every few weeks add a few more in, add a few more in. The way that we train our clients is on quite an organized formula. So any one of our clients, once the product is installed, will receive training on installation date, obviously. We have YouTube training manuals. Just going to let this, I'll just pause this in a second. Let me come back to this in a minute. We have YouTube training manuals. So all of our training has been converted into videos. So for those of you that like reading, there are manuals that you will get. For those of you which we see seems to be more popular now, we have bundles of videos online on a private YouTube channel saying, this is how you code this is how you use that functionality, or this is how you'd use a keyword. Those videos are anywhere from 2 minutes in length to half an hour in length. And we also, for all of our clients, run a weekly drop-in webinar. So anyone that is a client of ours will have an open invite to a weekly webinar. We have pathology, I believe, on a Monday and document on a Friday. It might be the other way around, from 1 till 2 o'clock. We run those webinars. They're interactive webinars, so everyone's talking at the same time. And we run them if we have 1 client present or 50 clients present, and we just go through how to program the tool and then cover off any specific questions in functionality as well as part of that, and they tend to work really well. So whenever you've got a question, jump into the webinar. And also different clients, share experience and different ways of doing things. So I'll let this run now, but essentially what you're going to see with the hosted offering, you wouldn't see any of this because it's just logged into EMIS itself. You wouldn't see this either because it's now delivered from a hosted platform from the ICB. But it's almost going to be like a ghost using your computer. So everything you're seeing now is MyBotGP logging into EMIS. It's been redacted and anonymized. As one of our clients let us record this to show for demo purposes. This is MyBotGP essentially doing, as we said in the slide, it's logging into EMIS for this example. Obviously, we do this for SystmOne as well. We can show that after if anyone wants to see it using SystmOne. It's going to navigate to where the pathology tests are. It's going to open it up. It's going to read every single one. Every line on every path test where there are multiple reports on multiple lines on one report, and skip to the next, to the next, to the next. Identify the ones it's got permission to action, apply the rules, file, send a message where appropriate, and then coming back to the archiving piece, that's up to you. It's very easy to set that up as you would be doing anyway in either EMIS or SystmOne as to whether you want to archive or don't want to archive. So what you're seeing now is essentially Ghost using EMIS for you in the background. We now deliver this, as we said at the beginning of the call, as a managed service. So it's living in a hosting center in an ICB, and we look after it for you. So if there are any issues with it, with the platform, we'll know before you do. Just processing away here. So if you imagine this just logging in, several times a day, emptying the inbox based on predefined time increments, filing away. And you know, some of the stuff to think about is when you start to use tooling like this, is thinking about how you look after it at the practice as well, making sure everybody's aware that you're using this type of tooling, that everyone's aware of the ranges that have been applied. When the bottle run, you know, for example, if there are, if someone's about to leave for the end of the day, they've, you know, or they're working, or they're about to leave, and they notice that there are some path tests that haven't been looked at yet, and they don't want to leave before they've been looked at, they should be aware that actually they can go home because the bot's due to turn on 6 again, or 5 o'clock, or 7 o'clock, and it's going to action them. So they will get actioned. They're not just going to get forgotten about and the following day come in and there's a bundle more in there, and then they get pushed to the back and you can't get to them. So that's sort of just some learnings that we've seen at practice level, people understanding when it's going to run, what it's going to do, and then people have the confidence to, you know, step away and let MyBotGP look after what, you know, essentially do what you've asked it to do for you. This will finish in a minute. About 30 seconds left, and then what we'll do is we'll stop, and then we can go back to questions again if there are more questions. So we've got our next week. I believe it's next week. I think on the same day we have another webinar for Docman. If any of you want to register for that, then please let us know. Within a couple of days, we'll send an email out with a copy of this link to this webinar and some more information. So that's enough for that. If I come back to pricing now, we've got different pricings for practices and PCNs, because what we're seeing now, as we touched on at the beginning of the call, is more PCNs making acquisitions. So we've adjusted our pricing to accommodate that. That's the business case we touched on at the beginning. That's per every doctor up to 19 days. It sounds like, looking at normals, it sounds like a lot, but you know, using the 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day for 15 minutes is 91 hours a year. You can see how time adds up. You know, most people work 8-9 hour days. Pricing is done like this, essentially. There's been a slight change to our pricing model to accommodate the new hosted offering. So there are 2 prices, and this is for practice pricing. It's 749 plus list times 30 pence. So for 10,000 list would be 3,749 plus VAT, by example, but we can come back to after. There's a 8,500 list example there. And our hosted service is based on list sizes. So if you have under 10,000 patients, it would be list times 7 pence. If you have up to 15,000 patients, you would pay 7 pence on the first 10,000, 6 pence on 10,000 and upwards. And if you have more than 15,000 patients, you would pay 5 pence on the rest. So first 1 to 10,000, 7 pence, 10 to 15,000, 6 pence, 15,000 and upwards, 5 pence. Now, for the PCN acquisitions, everything is essentially, you can count that as a complete list. Your whole list can be classed as one list. So we have some PCNs with 30 or 40 or 60,000 lists, which means anything over 15,000 is quoted at 5 pence. And second processes is a flat rate of 5 pence as well. But we can cover that off another time, if anybody, you know, for people that want to explore further. And here's just a bit more of an explanation of the rules. So we've got a bit of time left, and Sanjay's nodding, which means there are questions. Let's get to the questions, which we'll both get through to the best of our ability. So has my screen stopped sharing, Sanjay? Is that? Yeah.
Yes, it has. So, do you want to bring them up? Or should we, it's probably easier to bring them up. We can.
Do you want me to share them, or?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. So as they start to scroll in.
Okay, so, is that sharing?
Yeah. So if you just scroll up. So do you, so I'll start. So do you know what, that's right, not that question.
Okay, I think we need to go a bit higher. So we've done this one. We've done this one regarding IG. Thank you for the, yes, thank you for the presentation, Sanj. Thank you for the presentation in EMIS. How does the bot read groups of results that contain both normal and abnormal results? So if I understand this question correctly, which I think I do, but Sanj will correct me if I haven't, it will read each test individually, even if it's in a group format. So, and that goes back to one of the, we get asked this question a lot because I think our tooling is one of the only ones, or the only one, that can actually read a whole path report and every line on that path report. So therefore, if one line is abnormal or it's not been given permission to skip it, and the next, to action, it will skip it. And if the next one is normal, it will apply it's allowed to action rather. It will do that and follow the rules. Is that right, Sanj? Have I answered that correctly?
100%, yeah. And just there's a slight difference between EMIS and SystmOne. So as you know, it's a normal pathology filing tool, and an advice from our clinical team here and the CSO. It will file the ones it can. If any one of those within that group is abnormal due to how EMIS files, you have to leave the entire group on account or on the file, because obviously if you file it, they all get removed from the inbox. So from an EMIS point of view, as I say, if one of the path tests is out of range, it will skip it will skip that test and all tests within that group. From a SystmOne, it's slightly different. It's just the way that the system displays group tests. You can actually file them individually. So our tooling does file them individually. So the ones which can be filed will be filed from a SystmOne perspective. But EMIS is, due to the limitations of our EMIS files and the commentary and so forth, they're left to be done by a doctor.
Thank you. So any document processing in the pipeline for SystmOne? Yes, there is. Hopefully 2 to 3 months, be the equivalent to our document automation, loosely called attaching docs. Do you know what proportion on average of your client's result the bot files or skips in the practice? Just thinking, if it skips the entire batch, if one batch is abnormal, then it will leave a fair amount. That's an interesting question. It changes from client to client, depends a lot on what path test they've asked it to look after for them. It's an impossible question to answer with any exact detail.
Yeah, it's pretty much as I said before, that it is a normal tool, normal pathology filing. And it does work slightly different for EMIS and SystmOne, just because of the way the way you file within those systems is different. From the SystmOne perspective, we can file the normals within that group test because you're able to. From an EMIS point of view, you can't, because it will file the entire group. And then from what we've been told, and the clinical advice that we've been told, is to leave them on accounts so that they can be checked as a batch, because the filing commentary can be changed as well.
Thanks. So if MyBotGP missed an abnormal result, who would be legally responsible? Well, it depends on the definition of missed. So if we've given you a tool to use and said it can do something, i.e. it's able to read that accurately, and if you apply those rules, it will follow that action. If it doesn't do that, that's on us. 100% on us, because we would have told you that something can do something and it can't. Thankfully, that isn't the case. It hasn't happened. However, if you have configured it incorrectly, in the same way that if you weren't using an automation tool and you'd read a pathology test and made a mistake, it's no different, then that's on you. Can you confirm what happens in the system if the lab updates a normal range for a test? Is the GP user notified, and do they have to update check values in the MyBotGP system manually? It's a really good question, and that's one of the reasons we built this tool, because things do change. So previous iterations of automation, you agree upon a standard set of rules and ranges, and then you're stuck with them. So when there is a change of a keyword or a range, you're not able to do that. So technically the lab should let you know, as you know. So what you would do is you would log in and change it. If it reads a path test that's got different ranges, it's going to operate from the previous ranges, so it will flag up as incorrect. So there is, you got Sand, you look like you want to jump into that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's come up in one of our enhancement calls, and it's in discussion. For example, as you know, MyBotGP will read all of your pathology test categories and reference ranges and pops them into a platform for you to review. As we know, those lab ranges can change, and there is discussion about an enhancement to essentially flag that in the platform to automatically tell the doctor that the reference ranges from the lab has changed and what they are. So again, just sort of in terms of how the tooling works, we can patch update and we take enhancements and so forth. And I believe that's on the list for this year, I think. So yeah, just to give you a heads up on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Will document filing also be in a hosted environment? Yes. All of our tooling now will be delivered from the NHS hosted environment. We made a switch at the end of last year where we're no longer, we can, but we don't think it does anyone any justice to not use a hosted environment. There are limitations around using computers. You've got to physically go to the computer. We've seen scenarios where people have bought pathology filing or document or whichever application that they bought from us, put it on a computer, someone's unplugged it, or someone's child's come in and played with it when they're not supposed to touch it, or internet's gone down, or it had to be on a desk upstairs somewhere. So every time they wanted to check it, they had to run upstairs. And what that meant is it could be used better. And it had to be done that way before because of limitations in how automation can be delivered in primary care. And that's why we're so pleased and proud of our new partnership with the ICT, whereby we can now deliver this as a fully hosted service from an NHS hosted environment, from an NHS data center. So it's a long way of saying yes, everything will be from a VM. And what happens is at practice level, you'll have a couple of apps downloaded that you just download, that you can just log into MyBotGP anytime that you want, change rules or look at audit reports. So we've got a couple of minutes left, so let's get through the last couple of questions. We've got a question here. Please, can I ask about X-ray and USS reports? That sounds like a Sanjeev question.
So those types of tests, I think, are reliant more on the keywords. Obviously, there's no numerical information sent through for them. So they're not used. From what I've seen in terms of MyBotGP and the pathology tests which are activated, X-rays and USS don't seem to be that frequent. But what I would say is, if we think of it the other way, you've got the ability to file based on keywords, and as we know, X-rays and those reports come more textual. So if you're able to pick out a series of keywords and file on that basis, then it can be done.
Thank you. Next question is an interesting one, because this pops up every now and again, and I'm not sure where it's come from. It definitely hasn't come from us. So it's saying, if we procure another AI or RPA system for another service, will there be a clash with your program? I can categorically confirm the answer is no. You'll be completely fine. So yeah, that's popped up a couple of times. I think maybe there's some literature from somewhere else, not from us, that might have confused that unintentionally. No, the way to think about MyBotGP is it's a person. So it's the same as having 5 people doing pathology tests. It's no different. It's one login, one person, one user. Next question. So hopefully that answers that. You can acquire additional software. You can use whatever you like. This is completely standalone. Can you explain the Accurix message in more detail? Does the message only highlight normal results? So say a result shows a diabetic and the patient is known to have diabetes. What message will go in this case? Sanj is nodding. I'll let you do that one. We've got a couple of minutes left, Sanj, and then we're going to round off.
Yeah, sure. So the text message is in answer to the first part of your question, yes. it is essentially sent for the normal results. So where there are things or communications which need to be sent over and above that, i.e., as you said, if there are diabetes present, etc., then no, you wouldn't really tailor that the result within MyBotGP. It's a generic message which would be sent to say you would tailor that message however you want, but you have the ability to send one type of message for that pathology test category going out to that patient. So again, it's purely that normal based message that would be sent out.
Thank you. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So if anyone else has any more questions, please pop them in before we wrap up. Let's keep an eye on the chat box. Okay, it looks like that's most of the questions. So thank you for attending today. Thank you to Sanj for helping. Apologies for my cough, which seems to have passed now. I hope that wasn't too unpleasant for everyone. Yeah, and thank you. And we have our document next week. We run a couple of webinars a month on our products, so please keep an eye out. And if you want to know any more, let us know. Thank you. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.